Are you ready to become the dad you were meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect actions are better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of three, the founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they are called to be. We need epic dads now more than ever. And it is your responsibility and obligation to become the best father you can be and show your kids what is possible. Listen in for weekly tips, strategies, and actions you can take to go from average dad to epic dad. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Drew Camp here, founder of the Epic Dad Company. And my mission with this podcast is to help you level up as a dad and become the husband, father, and man you are called to be. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today is Monday, so we've got another awesome interview with an epic dad out there going and doing epic stuff. And we want to extract some value, some lessons learned that we can use and take away to implement into our life to fulfill our potential as a father. Hey, before we hop in today, guys, I've got a couple of quick announcements to the Epic Dad Company and to our Epic Dad community. So first is, if you're not tracking, I own a supplement company called the Epic Dad Company, right? And currently we have one product in the market. It is an all-natural pre-workout, and it is the #1 rated pre-workout for dads. So if you haven't tried that yet, you are totally missing out. One of the biggest challenges that we hear from dads when they want to step up and level up is #1, you need to get fit. And the biggest challenge we get is I don't have time, or I'm not motivated, or I'm not disciplined. And so that's why we designed Tedco pre-workout, is to try to solve that problem for you, is to use that as your discipline fuel, is to fuel up with all natural ingredients, including 5 grams of creatine, and get after it and get fit as a dad. So we have had that product out for almost a year now, and it's now become the #1 rated pre-workout for dads. But we have been a one-trick pony up into this point, and we are excited to announce, and if you've been following us on social media, or if you're part of our email list, you guys have seen that we announced our next product is about to release. And so I am super excited. We've been working on this for a long time, and our next product is what we are calling Paleo Post. So it is our post-workout solution to what you need as a dad. Now, Paleo Post is a beef bone broth protein. Obviously, this is going to be a dairy-free, so it's a non-whey option for protein. So it's going to be a great option for those that whey or lactose is a little bit tough on your belly. But in addition to that, the reason we chose to go with a beef bone broth protein is really with the addition of collagen peptides. So as dads, right, we're getting on up there in age a little bit. We're not 21 anymore, most of us at least. And we might have a little bit of creaking in our knees. Our back might be a little bit sore, right? And what collagen peptides are going to do is going to help us to not only build lean muscle mass, but also help us to repair any damage that's been done to our joints, to our ligaments, to our cartilage, and really just be an overall great option for a protein that has a little bit of addition into it for what dads needs than a whey. And so we are super excited about this. So I'll tell you just a little bit about Paleo Post. We're probably about 2 to 3 weeks away from launching the product. And so Paleo Post is created with what's called hydro beef. So hydro beef is a highly concentrated pure bone broth protein produced through an exclusive hydrolysis and ultrafiltration process. And this proprietary process begins with beef from cows raised in Sweden. And everybody knows that the most delicious cows are Swedish cows. So it is without any hormones, free of any GMO grains, grasses, hay, or anything like that. The process allows the protein to be hydrolyzed into a higher concentration of functional peptides, delivering an amazing 97% protein content. So all super sciencey stuff. But all that is to say that Paleo Post is the ultimate option that is extremely low in fats, carbs, and sugars, and an extremely good source of protein from beef. So I hope you guys are excited as we are about this next product coming out. Everything that we are going to launch is really designed to target a specific pain point for dads. And so we've got our pre-workout to get you in the gym, right? To get you disciplined, to get you motivated, to get you ready to go get fit as a father, which you absolutely need to be. And then now we have got a post-workout option so you can start building lean muscle mass and start using those collagen peptides to start repairing any ligaments, cartilage, and really just have an amazing experience with your protein option. Okay, guys. So with that out of the way, let's talk about today's guest. So today we've got on my good friend George Hayworth from the Present Fathers podcast. And George is a husband, he's a father, he's a combat veteran, and he is one of the hosts of the Present Fathers podcast, which I had the opportunity to go be on. George is, their mission with the Present Fathers podcast is to equip fathers to build legacies, making a positive impact in our society. And on this episode today, we talk about the impact of fatherlessness on society and culture, the importance of true masculinity in fatherhood, the generational impact of your decision to step up and lead as a father, and the importance of defining family values and culture. All right, guys, you are going to love this episode with George, so let's go ahead and hop in. George, what's up, bro?
How's it going, Drew?
Good, man. Yeah, you too, man. You doing all right?
I'm doing very well. I was, to be honest, I was sick the last couple of weeks, and I'm like finally through it. So it's really exciting to be able to like hit my workouts again without like huffing and puffing. So
that's brutal, man. When you can't get to the gym, like you feel like you already feel like shit because you're sick, and then you can't get any exercise in. So it's just like snowball effect of like feeling terrible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's some crazy thing going around, man. Like it freaking laid me out for a couple of days, and then my wife's got it, and I think our daughter got it first, and then she was patient zero. But everyone I know is getting something. So
really?
Hopefully your family's dodging all the bugs.
Yeah, where are you guys at?
We're in Tennessee.
Okay, well you're not that far from us. It might come down our way.
Yeah, hopefully not.
So, yeah, where in Tennessee are you at?
We're close to Nashville. For those listening, I'm actually right outside Fort Campbell in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Okay, cool, man. You were a 101st guy, right?
I was, yeah. So yeah. I mean, if you want, I could kind of tell that story about how we're back here. But yeah. So met my wife here when I was active duty. We got married after my deployment, and when we got out of the Army, we moved to Texas for 2 years, the Frisco, McKinney area, and after 2 years, the company had gone through like a huge merger, and they were kind of like, you can kind of work remote if you want. It doesn't really matter. So I asked my boss, I was like, can we move? And he was like, yeah, man. So we moved back to Tennessee because that's where my wife's got a boatload of family. And we definitely take advantage of the grandparent babysitters very often.
Yeah. And you just couldn't get away from being close to the Army base too,
Yeah. I mean, so I got out of the Army completely, but I had a 3-year break in service and was like, maybe I'll try the Guard. And so I'm glad I'm kind of like back close to home because, I've been able to take my soldiers out to Fort Campbell and blow stuff up. So there's perks.
How long you been in the Guard?
Since 2019, January 2019. So.
Okay. Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, yeah, man. So George, I had the opportunity to come on your podcast.
Yes.
Which is awesome, man. Super awesome conversation. If you guys haven't listened to it, I'll link up the episode. You guys can go check it out. But wanted to, have the opportunity to bring you on, kind of hear your story as well, because we're in similar lanes and similar paths and have similar missions to really help dads, step up and lead the way that they're capable of. So, for guys that don't know the podcast, would you let us know a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So before, I just want to say you were an outstanding guest, bro. It was really sweet having you on our podcast. So if you're a fan of Drew, definitely check it out because he crushed it. So with that, I'll talk about me a little bit. I'm the oldest of 3. I was actually born in Europe in Vienna, Austria. So was my younger brother. And then my parents moved us to Oregon, which is where my mom's side is from. So I grew up out on the West Coast. but I think we're about the same age. So it was like the heyday, right? You could just ride your bikes all day. You'd be gone all day. Like mom would just say, "Hey, come home by dinner time."
Yes, be home when
And
the streetlights come on,
yeah, that was pretty much it. And even after the streetlights were on, as long as we were in the neighborhood, my parents were kind of like, hey, just don't break anything or whatever. And yeah, man. So like my early childhood was freaking awesome. My brother and I were always like outside just doing stuff. But yeah, I'll fast forward to like my high level, life story. But we grew up all the way in Oregon. I knew I wanted to serve my country in some way. Kind of bounced around between like different things I thought I might want to do, but obviously 9/11 was a huge pivotal moment for pretty much anyone who was alive to be through that. So landed on doing Army ROTC. I thought it was gonna be all this like high speed stuff, like, yeah, we're gonna kick indoors and jump out of planes and stuff. And then I got there and I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
not
what is this?
RTC, bro. No.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, what is this? You lied to me, Hey, imagine that a recruiter didn't tell you the truth. But no, it was in all seriousness, it was good. Because I was able to commission and go active duty. So I was a field artillery officer, basic course Fort Sill, stationed at Fort Campbell, deployed once with 1st Brigade 101st to Kunar, Afghanistan. Looks like we just crossed paths a little bit. And so I did that for about 4.5 years. I'd started a family at that point, met my wife here, and kind of just seemed like it was time to, it was going to be a lot better for my family if I picked a different line of work. So it was a very hard decision to get out, but we did. And then I've worked in the tech field, working as a sales guy, both hunting and account managing for corporate sales, IT services stuff. So done that, almost 8 years now. And on top of that, we run the Present Fathers podcast with 3 of my good buddies. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah. What made you want to start the podcast?
Yeah. So the primary reason we wanted to start that is just that we were so frustrated with kind of the lack of resources for men and dads specifically, and also just the direction our culture was headed. And so I think this is something you and I align very closely on. But we were kind of the 4 of us actually. Sorry, we've been lifelong friends, kind of texting each other all the time, basically every day, and especially like when 2020 hit, we were like, okay, the world is going crazy. This is insane. And so instead of just complaining about it, we were like, we have to do something. And so we were like, well, we have minimal resources, minimal time. What can we do that might help someone? And so the Present Fathers podcast was born. And our sole mission is to help fathers through either knowledge and then highlighting the stories of our guests. We bring on guys from all walks of life, different skill sets and expertise. And so there's something for everyone there. You can relate to someone and learn a lot. And we've certainly learned a lot through the process, but that's the heart of the mission, is to, much like what you're doing with the Epic Dad Co, is trying to teach dads what true masculinity is, how to raise sons and daughters, and ultimately, play our small part in hopefully, transforming generations for our country.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is the issue like with culture, right? So 2020 was a huge turning point for me, as well. I think for a lot of people to kind of wake up, and see what's going on. And we've just seen, in my opinion, kind of drastic accelerated decline since then, right? And so like, what do you think is, like, why are we seeing this, and like why is it so important that we need good fathers?
Yeah, I think there's several kind of insidious cultural forces that have been working against what the average American probably thought life should be. And so like a great book that kind of points out a lot of this is actually called The Coddling of the American Mind. Highly recommend that book. And it's interesting because that one was, I want to say, was written in 2016 or 17, something like that. So I almost feel like they need to make an abridged version post 2020, because I can only imagine what they would add to it. But they break down a lot of things there where like a lot of cases people aren't even necessarily trying to be evil or whatever, but it's like they think they're helping, but their help is actually worse than if they wouldn't help. So there's a lot of that going on. But then I also think there's a lot of behind the scenes people, either in pursuit of money or power, are willing to sell out people for that power or money. So I think we saw a lot of that in like post 2020. But really, when it comes to fathers, I think, so I've been bringing this down. Is actually something I'm going to make a kind of an extended video on this. I've been doing a lot of research, and I'm not completed yet to a point where I can really like nail it. But I think you and I are exactly the same age. So our parents were Gen Xers, right? And Gen Xers, actually, their parents had the highest rates of divorce up in American history up to that point. So our parents, for all their faults, had a lot working against them, right? And so as I've aged and become a father myself, I have a lot of empathy for their generation, because they were kind of led astray through fatherlessness, and just everything that divorce happens. And then you have the rise of like the sexual revolution and feminism. And I think that all those swirling forces, they were set up for failure when it came to like knowing how to be a parent. So I think our parents in general tried their best. But we're kind of this weird generation now where we're like the second effect of that initial wave of increased divorce and problems. And it kind of just like, I don't really want to like place blame, but it kind of seems like Gen X passed the buck a little bit. And so now you got this whole generation of guys around our age, give or take 10 years, who never really learned what it means to be a man. That's a huge part of my story is like, I don't really think I knew what genuine manhood should look like. That isn't just one dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Until maybe a couple years ago. Like if I'm brutally honest, like actually knowing it in my heart and being secure in that. I think a lot of my younger 20s and teens was, I was chasing validation that like, oh, you're a man now. And we do a horrible job in this country of like rites of passage, especially for young boys. It's exceedingly important. Daughters are a little different. But yeah, the wound of fatherlessness is huge. And I think our generation is kind of getting it a little bit better. I actually saw some stats that the divorce rate is declining, but it's also coupled with the fact that most people are not getting, or less people are getting married in total. Yeah. So it's actually, maybe we're not improving. I haven't gotten enough like data to actually weigh that out and see if the scales have tipped one way or the other. But I think, thankfully, through, things like counseling and therapy and psychology being a little bit more popularized, that our generation kind of woke up to some of the stuff that Gen X didn't really have the teaching to even do something about. And so I think it's starting to turn. And as painful as like 20, 21, 22, 3 have been, I really do think the pendulum's swinging back. I think a lot of people now realize that, the old American dream is not really possible in the way that it was for like our parents and their parents. It's almost impossible to have a single income household now. Almost every single household in America is 2 income. So there's so many factors, but I think at the heart of it, every man can choose for himself to put his foot in the ground and do better. And his wife and him can unify in that vision. And so whatever your faults, whatever your disadvantages or your challenges, just making that commitment already is going to produce a better outcome for your kids. And it's incredibly difficult, but I think it's hands down the most important decision that you'll ever make in your life. And I hope that when I'm on my deathbed, I can be very proud of like my effort towards that goal.
Mm. Yeah. And I think, you're exactly correct, right? Going back and just kind of talking about the generation, before, I don't know all the names or whatever, right? But the boomers, our parents, their parents, right?
Yep.
And you kind of look at the timeline, right? And that's kind of when all, we had the New Deal come out, right? And so we started to get this kind of social welfare class, right? And you disincentivize, men to go out and be excellent, right? And we started to demonize success, demonize excellence, demonize, masculinity. And that's taken effect over the last 30, 40 years. And then all of a sudden we're in this place where this is exactly what you talked about, right? Is we've got this generation of men that are grown now. We've got kids of our own. And we're just sitting here thinking like, man, I never really was taught this, right? Like, we didn't have a rite of passage. And now all of a sudden I'm a grown adult and I'm still figuring out what it means to be a man. And so I am super thrilled and excited that there's been this movement, over the past 2 to 3 years of seeing this, guys like your podcast and others out there that are really trying to speak the same message and say like, hey, it is up to us dads to be the leaders of home, to take responsibility and like chart the path forward. And we're not going to sit here and play victim, right? That like, oh,
Yep.
nobody, ever showed me how to do this. It's like, no, okay, tough shit. Like now it's on us, right? To really, like you said, put that stake in the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like to the victimhood thing too, like me digging into the data about it and like just trying to understand so we can diagnose, that's all it is. You got to identify where you are and what you're up against because it's going to affect you. And to say otherwise is just naive. Like it's just straight up. I mean, it doesn't have to be stuff that we're talking about. It's like, if it's raining outside, obviously it affects how you, conduct business outside. Right. So it's the same kind of concept. So everything I'm saying isn't like, oh, I have an excuse now to not be my best self because my parents struggled with this or that. Like I don't subscribe to any of that. And the sooner that people start embracing taking ownership of what you can control and making the change, even though it may be hard, is how you change generations. So maybe you'll never really fully get it right, but then your kids have that much more of an advantage and they'll take your work and build upon it for their own families. And that's a powerful thing, it's very challenging because it's really hard not to like assign blame. But when I look back on this through my research on this, I just have to ask the questions like, where were all the men standing up to all this insanity and saying enough's enough? We basically had an entire generation of men just sit back and be like, oh, well, that's not my problem or something like that. They passed the buck, and I question if our parents' generation had taken a harder stand against things that they didn't agree with, maybe we wouldn't have the world we have today. I don't know. It's again, it's all hypothetical, but I've been pondering that question a lot. And so that's why, as I look at my life specifically, I'm very, very intentional about everything that I can do in every aspect of my life to not follow that pattern. And I think that perfection isn't the goal, it's progress, right? And so if everyone in their own life can kind of take that same stance, it's going to make a difference. You may never see it, but it's going to make a difference. And I have to believe that, because otherwise, what's our option? Roll over and die?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the pendulum swings, and most of the time it swings slowly, right? I mean, there are times in politics, right, where we see it swing fast back and forth. But when you think about cultural shifts, it swings very slowly.
Yeah.
And so, you have to think as a father, it's like, okay, I'm not only teaching my kids, the values that I want to instill in them. It's like, if I do a good job, they're going to teach their children, and their children going to teach their children, right? And we as dads have the opportunity to kind of break that chain. There's this awesome image, I'm sure you've probably seen it, where it's match heads like right in a row, right? And it's like, it's like 5 of them right here. They're all burn match heads. It's like burn, 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 burn. And then there's one match head that's down just a little bit, right? And then the rest of the match heads are up and they're all not burned. And it's like, right now we have the opportunity as dads to be that one match head, right, that breaks that chain.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, like, what are the values, principles, things that define masculinity, that define manhood, that we need to be focused on and start driving into?
Yeah. So I'm going to quote from a book called Tender Warrior. For me, that was a very educational book, because I missed a lot of this growing up, right? I wasn't trained well to really know in my heart, like, what masculinity should be, right? It was very one-dimensional, provider and protector. I think we normally default to those two as men. But so in the book, he argues there's 4 pillars of manhood. So he calls it king, warrior, mentor, and lover or friend, right? So the king is, you're the commander of your family, right? You have authority over your family, or even if you're single, you have authority over yourself, right? You have the power to make a difference. And ultimately, men are leaders, right? In some way, some area of your life, we have a capacity for leadership. We can bear the weight of it. We're created for that purpose. And so, back to the cultural question, that leg or that dimension of manhood has been massively under attack. Oh, you want to lead, or you believe you can lead well? You're such a male chauvinist pig. You're such a toxic male. And it's just a disservice to everyone, because effective, well-balanced masculine leadership is a gift. a good leader is a gift to those who serve under them, right? Like we can relate to this. We've both been in the military. Like a good leader makes a massive impact on an organization, not because they're the best at shooting their rifle or whatever, but because of the culture they create. So to deny that is not just hurting men, it's hurting women too, and children. So the next example is the warrior. And I think this is pretty obvious, right? Like we're supposed to protect our families. Men are supposed to have a capacity for violence to harness it, but we're at our best when we're protecting, not attacking. So I think that's a key distinction he makes in the book is all of our strength and all of our power is best served when it's defending the innocent. And I mean, I can't even imagine someone trying to debate that. It's just, I mean, every person, if they were in danger, would want to be protected by someone brave and strong, right? The next one is mentor or teacher. And he makes the point that like men should know things. They should have mastery over things. And if you think like, I just reflect on my own life, I've always been like trying to hone a new skill or be better at something. And I think we're just hardwired that way, but we're also hardwired to train and draw out of others their potential. And so that's, it kind of ties into leadership, but think about your children. It's your job to teach them. It's your job to guide them and coach them and raise them so that they can go be self-sufficient. And then the last one is lover, right? So behind all this armor, behind all this strength, there is a deep beating heart that beats passionately for your family. And that's where that drive to protect and to provide and to lead comes from. It's not from some, misguided, selfish desire. It's a selfless desire out of love for your family. And the thing I'll add to that is, to quote my good friend, John Michael, when you talk about compassion for your family, it's that you love them a lot and they know it. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, I love those 4 pillars, man. In a similar fashion, I've kind of gone to work as well, right? Of really trying to define, what does good masculinity look like? What does manhood look like? What is kind of a framework that I can use to really filter my decisions on? And, I go back to the book, Raising a Modern Day Knight, which I've mentioned a ton on this podcast before. So you guys, not hearing anything new here. But I think you really need to, whatever that foundation is going to be, and a lot of them are similar in nature, right? We just kind of different wrapping paper on it. You need to have some type of framework that you can go to, right? Of like, this is defined, like what it means to be a man. Because if not, it's just nebulous, right? And you're going to make decisions, and not really think about the impact that they're going to have, and not think about like, is this direction I want to go? Is this the direction I identify as a man? Like, is this the right decision for me? So I think if you have that framework in place, that's just something you can use to filter your decisions on is, am I living in alignment with that?
Yeah. And, back to the cultural stuff, polarity is under attack, right? Polarity is a good thing. The differences between the masculine and feminine is the most beautiful aspect of humans. And so not only is manhood under attack, I would argue that what it means to be a woman has been under attack for just as long. Right?
Yeah, I mean, all the best women are men now. I don't know if you knew that.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Babylon Bee, for that one. Oh man, that's so funny. But you think about it honestly. Our wives' generation, they were all told like, oh, go work in corporate America, and you can have it all, right? You can have the job, you can be a mom, you can be a homemaker and a wife, and work all this career. It's like there's only so many hours in the day, man. Something's got to give, and in general, I think most women bought this lie that they could go do all these things and basically just be men. That's where it's come full circle to, is like now it's basically just be men is what women are told, which is insanity. And I forget what it was. It was Joe Rogan quoted it or something about this massive poll that went out for women, because there's an increasing number of women over 30 who don't have kids, more than ever in American history. So it's obviously problematic for like our country to sustain population. And then the poll, like something in the poll was like X% of them won't ever have kids. But like, I think it was like 20% of them won't ever have kids, but like almost every single one will regret it. And I bounced that off my wife, and she's like, yeah, definitely. I mean, being a mom is like hands down the best thing I've ever done, probably ever will do. And that's not like it's almost people think that's a demeaning thing nowadays, right? Like if you say that, like she's proud to be a mom and she's proud to be a stay-at-home mom, people are like, well, why?
Oh, that's all you do? Yeah.
That's all you do? It's like, what do you mean that's all you do? Yeah, she's raising my daughter
Yeah.
with massive intent and presence and vigor and all the beauty that is the feminine, like I don't want her doing anything else. Like we only get our daughter for so many years. Why would she can go to work when she's gone, I mean, and I'm sure people are going to blast me for saying that, but like I don't care. Like that, I think in a lot of ways previous generations had it right. They didn't struggle with a lot of the crap that we are because they stuck to more traditional roles. And so when you think about polarity and just look in pop culture, how everything's androgynous now. And so if you're a young boy or girl, who do you look up to? What are your role models? You can't tell me that that's good,
Yeah. And I think, that speaks to the reason why us as dads need to really focus on excellence, right? And personal excellence, because
Yes.
if your kid is looking to culture and society to find that role model, like, bro, they ain't going to find it, man. Or if they do, it's not going to be good. Right. So, it's up to you to really be like, showing them the way, showing them what's possible and being that leader for them, So I love your thoughts on that of like, obviously we're in agreement here, but just want to kind of know your perspective on like, why is it so important for dads to be thriving for that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Anthony Pompliano told us, don't outsource your one chance to instill your values in your children. And I was like, that's a good one liner. But that's basically what you're doing. If you don't own your role as leader of your household, which starts with self-leadership, by the way. So it starts with, okay, I surround myself with like guys like Drew who will say, hey, George, you're not living up to the standard. Here, let me help you, right? It's not all just like beaten down, but you don't do it alone. You have to have brotherhood. You have to humble yourself to seek input, to grow, to study, to learn. So it's all self-leadership first before you're effectively leading your family. But to own that responsibility, because if you don't, you're outsourcing it to whoever your kids will listen to. And that should scare you if you're a parent. Like if you don't, I mean, you nailed it on our podcast where you talk about like the camps are this, the camps are brave, the camps are caring, defining that family culture, resist all these outside forces. And then they grow up with it's not necessarily self-confidence. It's like beyond that. They have a understanding of who they are in the world from a very early age. And that creates peace in their mind and in their heart. And, I think I look back on my own life, I was missing that a lot. And I think that's why I struggled in so many areas, was because I basically went out into all these different arenas to try and figure out who I really was and how to prove myself. So,
yeah, it's, I need to find myself, right? And to that, right? It's like you create that environment where, the child has their identity in their family, right? And they're not going to succumb to these outside forces because they know who they are, right?
Yeah.
Like at their core, they know who they are. So I think that's so important. But I want to go back to the self-leadership part, right?
Okay.
So, I think you nailed it on the head. It's like you got to lead yourself before you lead anybody else, right? So, like if you're a fat piece of shit, and like you want to go lead your kids, and like you're lazy and anxious and depressed and all that stuff, and like I get it, like you want to be a good dad for your kids, but like, dude, like what should these guys be doing to lead themselves first?
Yeah, so I think the physical fitness is like the first one to start with because it's the most obvious, right? Everyone sees your appearance. This is your outward projection to the world of who you are. And so I've gained a lot of empathy for people who struggle with, getting healthy. And it's not the goal isn't to look like a supermodel or whatever, right? It's not to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger, but to have some level of mastery over self requires you to discipline yourself to hone your body at least a little bit. I think that projection speaks volumes. And so, just personally, like I have to question people who talk to me who are like really unhealthy. If they try and give me advice, I kind of have to think about it for a little while if I really want to take it. And that's not out of like arrogance, but I think in my head, the process is if you can't discipline yourself or at least get the help around you to help you discipline yourself enough to at least make progress in this arena, are you really disciplined anywhere else? So for me, that's like the basic one. I think you and I are pretty aligned on that one. Surprised they're both from the Army, but
Yeah. And I said like a fat piece of shit, right? Like I have empathy as well, right?
yeah,
Of people that are in that situation. What I don't have empathy with though is if you're in that situation, you don't like it and you're not doing anything about it.
correct.
Right? If you're
And I think
complaining, yeah.
that exact point applies to every aspect of improving as a man,
Yeah.
right? You're selfish, but you don't do anything to have anyone like an accountability partner or anything to help you to be less selfish. Or you're angry all the time. You yell at your kids, but you do nothing to learn how to.
Mhm.
So it's not just your body. I think that same thinking that you just described applies to every single aspect of what it means to pursue authentic manhood. And I'm certainly not there. Like, so I'm none of what I'm saying is like, oh, George has all the answers and he's the pinnacle of masculinity. Far from it. And the reason I'm closer to it than I've ever been in my life is because I started surrounding myself with better guys, both in business and in their families and in their faith and in their fitness, and just soaking in all of their wisdom. And I've grown more in the last year, year and a half doing this podcast, learning
Mhm.
from all these amazing guys, than if I would have just stuck my head in the sand and be like, oh, well, I do pretty good.
Mhm. Yeah, that's been one of the biggest benefits for me too of doing the podcast is like,
Yeah.
very, very selfishly is just like learning from people,
Yep.
right? They're like farther along. And I'm like, I like you guys that are listening. It's kind of funny because like I record these for myself like most of the time,
Yeah.
and then I'm just like, cool, I'll see if anybody else likes it. Right. And you guys do, right? But that, I say that like half jokingly, but part of that is true. Like because I want to intentionally seek out and surround myself with guys that are
Yes.
further along than I am, right, and learn from them because like you said, like nobody is perfect at this, and the people that we have on the podcast aren't perfect as well.
Mhm.
But we have the opportunity to not just sit with our hands, not sit on top of our hands and not do anything. Like we're
Yeah.
actively seeking input and guidance from these people and getting around the right people. So like people listening, like yeah, you don't have to start a podcast, right? But like if you're just sitting there and you need to get better and you're not doing anything about it, like, dude, shame on you, man. Like, start taking some
Yeah.
action.
And I mean, the thing to remind yourself is your kids will know one day. They're going to notice. They're going to notice that they'll run across another dad who was out there getting it, and they're going, "Oh,
Mm,
well, why didn't my dad do that?" It's
mm,
going to happen. And that's not again, that's not to be like living in a state of constant anxiety of like, am I enough? That's not what I'm saying. But if you are making an intentional effort to improve yourself in any area of your life, I think 9 out of 10 people, or maybe more, would respect that, and
mm,
even if you mess up.
yeah.
And man, I think a lot of guys stay stuck because the fear of having to reach out or the fear of having to join a group that would help them is greater than the fear of staying the same. And it's almost like the fear of rejection or the fear of judgment just trumps everything else. And what I found, because I did a group called the Family Captain, and I'm in a group now called Apogee Dads or Apogee Strong. And man, everyone's brutally honest. Like it's just like, hey man, I struggled with this week, and these are the wins for the week, and everyone's just pouring it out there. And it's all men, it's all grown guys who are like, dude, one of the guys in our group runs like a freaking 8-digit business, like dude's crushing it, and he's pouring his heart out in our group, and what I've learned is that fear is a lie. It's not real. I have not been in any group or like therapy session that's with groups where people actually judge, because everyone is broken. Everyone has the same crap going on. It's just got a different filter on it, for their life, but everyone's hurting. Everyone's got weaknesses. And the second that you like get over that fear or put it in its place because it's not true, and reach out to someone and they like, hey man, I'm really struggling and I need help. I just don't know where to start. Will you help me? I personally don't know anyone who would say no to that guy,
Mm,
you know? Um, so I think that's a huge issue. And I don't really know how to fix it other than to just plead to people like this that by reaching out, you will be rewarded and you will heal, and you'll surprise yourself too. Like you will bless others because you've got experiences that they don't. And that some way, somehow you're going to pay it forward.
mm.
That's an amazing experience when that happens.
Yeah, man. The lone wolf mentality is so terrible, man. Like, and
It's
whether
not
it
even like the
is,
lone wolf. It's like a scared animal burrowing for the winter.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what I was gonna say. Like even if it's a lone wolf mentality because of fear, right? It's still terrible, man. Like there's a Bible verse, and I'm not like the expert in the Bible, so I couldn't tell you which verse and chapter it is, but it's as iron sharpens iron, as to a man, shall sharpen a man
yes,
or something like that, right? And so
yes.
it's same concept, right? It's like you need to be around people. Like men are not meant
Yeah.
to be created in a vacuum. Like we're meant to be part of a tribe.
Well, there's another Bible verse since you brought it up, and it was talking about when David and Jonathan, I think Jonathan, man, if I'm misquoting this, people are going to crucify me for it, but it's okay. But his best friend, I think it's Jonathan. And there's a verse that says that only a man knows the serpentine passages of your heart. And if you think about it, we can relate to women on a lot of levels, but there's just something about when you have a close male friend, you just connect in a different way.
Mm.
And I think we need both. I think we're created to need both, but I think our culture has embraced this idea that you don't need brotherhood, and that's probably the most dangerous lie that's been sold to our culture.
Yeah, I mean, just look at our culture, right? The average guy, right, white knuckling it through life, probably doesn't have one good friend,
Yeah.
and like look at where this got you, dude. Like here you are, like you're probably anxious, you're depressed, you're overweight,
Mhm.
you feel like shit. Like maybe try something different, man. Like get over the fear, like
Yeah.
reach out, like George is saying, make connections and have like real deep conversations.
I mean, this stat should pretty much drive the point home. I think men commit suicide 7 times higher than women, at a rate 7 times higher. So
Yeah,
obviously isolation is not working.
yeah.
Just straight up.
Yeah. Well, I want to pivot a little bit, man, and kind of talk about the Army side of the house. Would love to know kind of
Certainly.
your experience. One in the 101st, it's not quite as good as the 82nd.
There it is.
And you want to know your experience, man, and then really want to learn, like, have you brought any lessons from the military into family life?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. So for me, the military was an overwhelmingly positive experience. Just to give a little bit of context, so my parents split up when I was 16. It was an extremely messy divorce, and I basically spent from the time that I was 16 to 26, about a decade, like really being angry at my dad. And most of it was unjust. I was a confused, pissed off teenager. But I kind of stayed emotionally stuck as a 16-year-old teenager who didn't really know what it meant to be a man. So I joined the military because I really wanted to serve my country. I was a very idealistic guy. I mean, I still am. But if I'm brutally honest with myself, a big part of it was a way that I knew I could find the test to know whether or not I was a man. There was definitely a wound I was trying to fill, or fill a hole with it. It was a God-sized hole that I was trying to fill with an army-sized peg, But outside of that motivation, it was an extremely good experience for me. So I grew up quick, of course, but I was extremely fortunate to serve with. I mean, at the time when I deployed, it was 2012. I had guys on my team that had deployed 4 times or 5 times already.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they were just masters of the craft, And so as a young lieutenant, 23 years old when I deployed, I just got to be surrounded by a bunch of, type A masculine combat vets, warriors who taught me a lot, not just about the Army, but just about manhood in general. So it was a really like honing experience for me. So like I came home from deployment feeling like, man, I'm king of the world, like I know what I'm about now. And yeah, just overall whole experience, just having to, when you're a leader, of course, too, like you have to get better because people depend on you. And I took my role extremely seriously. We can maybe come back to, I had a failure very early on that was a really good lesson. I don't know if you want to touch that now or.
Yeah, let's hit it.
Okay. So when I went to basic course, I was like, well, I'm going to go to Ranger School. I'm going to do whatever I can to like get a slot and go to Ranger School, because if I'm going to lead soldiers, I need to show that I will do whatever it takes to like earn their respect. So I worked really hard. I got a slot through the pre-ranger program, because in field artillery, it's not like the infantry where everyone gets a slot. It's a little bit more competitive. So I had to like get one, and I did. And so I was like, yeah, man, I'm on the way, like we're first step there. And I was like training my butt off to get ready for it. And like in my head, I was looking ahead to like, okay, Derby phase, mountain phase. I was thinking of all the phases. I kind of overlooked the most important week at the beginning. And yeah, man. So I failed the land nav, double no-go the land nav. So I was out of the course right from the start. And I was like, dude, my career is over, because I'm going to the 101st. They know that I'm not there yet because I'm here at Ranger School. And I just failed it very quickly. And oh, by the way, I know we're also deploying in like 3 months. So everyone's going to think I'm a weak, pathetic little lieutenant who's just going to get in the way. And that like my career would go nowhere. And so like, and also I never really like had something I worked so hard for and like needed, internally, like for the validation, and have it fail. It was a very pivotal experience in my life. But I think it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And here's why. Because if I would have gotten through, I was an arrogant, cocky kid who thought he was, king of the world. And, I'm all tough, and I would have got the tab, and I would be like, oh, I'm a Ranger, man. Like I would have been one of those guys. But because I failed, I had to swallow my pride, show up at a place of massive humility and embarrassment, and work my tail off to prove to everyone that, hey, I will hone myself and be an asset to the unit.
Yeah.
And so I needed that slice of humble pie. I really do think it was kind of a divine experience where he was like, George, here's a lesson for you,
No, I think it was. I think it
was,
man, because I've had the opposite experience. I'll tell you my Ranger School experience here in a little bit. Yeah, we had. So I was enlisted first, right? So I was enlisted on deployment, and we had a freaking awesome PL, man. I think he's still in. I believe he's like a lieutenant colonel or something. I don't know. He was like the man though. And we got a new PL, I think like month 3 of deployment. And super young guy, just graduated from Ranger School, came in. We'd been in theater for 3 months, so we kind of knew a little bit what was going on.
Yeah.
And came in just like you were talking about, super cocky, right? Like, I'm a Ranger, I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm, y'all get out of the way, I'm leading type stuff. And the area we were in was not, it was kinetic, but not like as kinetic as other places. So like there were firefights, but it wasn't like an everyday thing.
Yep.
But really what we had to worry about was dismount IEDs.
Yeah.
And pressure plate IEDs. And so we had like, TTPs, like tactics, and procedures in place to mitigate the risk on that. And so we had to basically walk in a file like everywhere. Super annoying. You had to like spray chalk down on the ground, right? And make sure like nobody's stepping across the line, like get their leg blown off. And anyway, so this new PL comes in, and we've been doing these TTPs, like we know the area, right? We're like, hey, we know this. And we had just set up an OP. I don't remember if this was this mission or another mission. No, it was this mission. We had set up and cleared this village, and we had like an OP set up overnight. We had like one squad like out on the line. We had one that was mine, was Overwatch. We were like up on the buildings. And I'll never forget it, man. Like that morning, we just hear boom, and we were like, shit, man. Like we knew that sound, and so, we kind of like come to it. We figure out what had happened. And this guy, this PL, super confident guy, Ranger School, didn't want to listen to anybody, took one step outside of our cleared line because he had to go take a shit. Yeah. And, I like I said, I wasn't there on the line. I was in Overwatch, but that was kind of the story, was like, told him multiple times, like, hey, sir, it's not cleared. Like, you need to just take a shit right here. And he was like, man, I know what I'm doing. And then one step, boom. So to your point, man, it's like that lesson, like,
how to save my life.
Yeah. Humility, it comes to you for sure. So I'm glad you learned that way.
And through that deployment, I'll try and wrap this up quick. So I deployed on an advisory team. So I didn't deploy in like the standard role of like being purely an FSO to an infantry company or something like that. Fire support officer. for those listening. So I deployed on a team of 14 guys, and it's very rank heavy. There was only 2 specialists. Everyone else was at least an E5. We had 4 lieutenants, a captain, a major, E7, a bunch of E6s. So like everyone had to do everything, which was freaking awesome as like a brand new lieutenant. Like I got to be a 240 gunner, a Mark 19 gunner, a 50 cal gunner. I got to lead patrols. We would rotate the lieutenants on like who led the patrols, but in reality, like the major was kind of just, he was teaching us, you know, if things got hairy, he would 100% would have taken over. He was an infantryman who had done, this was his 4th deployment. He invaded Iraq as a lieutenant, you know, so pretty grizzled guy. But that experience was freaking amazing because I just felt like finally for the first time in my life, like I was around a bunch of really hard men and I earned my keep among them, you know?
Yeah.
And that was like, that, like, I got like emotional. Like one of the guys had to go home early, like a month early or whatever. And he had been in for quite a long time, done a lot of deployments. And he was like, "Hey sir, you're definitely like, you're hard charging. Like you're definitely one of the good ones. Like just remember this experience and keep doing a good job." And I was like, "Thank you." You know, like I'm not crying. Because I needed that, man. I was still just a scared little boy trying to prove himself. So for me, it was almost like a healing experience. But let me fast forward through like everything I learned about the Army and like how it's played into fatherhood was, I mean, selfless service, right? If you're a leader, the notion of like you get up early to prepare so that your platoon can rest more and all that kind of stuff, definitely played into fatherhood. Like I never needed motivation to like take care of my daughter. And I chuckle about this. Like we were in Texas and I took my daughter, my wife was, I think, visiting family back home in Tennessee. And like, I took my daughter, it's just me, you know, holding my daughter, going through the grocery store, getting groceries. And this woman stopped. She's like, "Where's her mother?" And I was like, "She's not here." And she's like, "Well, why not?" And I was like what? Like I can't get groceries with my daughter? Like, I mean,
yeah.
Anyway,
It's well, just to hit on that too, is I've had that experience as well, right? Where I have like all 3 kids with me, like at the grocery store, and like that's just like normal life, bro. Like I'm a dad, and you know, like I will have like women come up to me and be like, "Oh, you got a busy day today with kids, don't you?" And I'm like, no, it's like it's
like
just
they're my kids.
Yeah, like I'm not babysitting. It's my kids.
Yeah.
My kids, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like, you know, that I think that's one of the biggest ones I took away was selfless service. You know, just straight up discipline. I think I think a lot of like the Army values, you know, loyalty, honor, duty, all those things, I think they're just really good too. You know, if you kind of adapt them for fatherhood, they make a lot of sense. So I think, you know, I live, breathe Army. That was like my identity, you know? So when I became a dad, I didn't really need a whole lot. I think I've always actually been pretty good at like working very hard to be a good dad. Where I've struggled was in my marriage. So I don't know if you really want to get into that on this podcast, but
yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, I mean, so like one of the bad things about the military is it's very hard to put that persona off, you know, to come home and not talk to your family like they're your soldiers, you know. And so a great book that people should listen to is called The Alter Ego Effect. That's actually one of the examples in the book. Is he meets this special operations colonel after this big speech that he gave or whatever, the author of the book, Todd Herman. And, you know, the colonel's like asking him all these questions and, you know, "Hey, I really struggle like being a dad and everything." And he's like, "Create another persona. You're Colonel so-and-so at work, but when you come home, take your uniform off, put on a different shirt. Now you're your dad alter ego, you know." And that guy doesn't yell at his kids. That guy doesn't, you know, you can embrace. So I should have learned that a lot sooner. But in terms of struggling with our marriage, it's for both me and my wife, it's childhood stuff. And I think that's something that like we were really caught off guard about, like how much things that happen to you in childhood will rear its head in marriage. Because what happens is you start reacting to each other in the same way it's a traumatic, it's like PTSD response. It's the same as a soldier, you know, having nightmares or whatever from combat. Your body physically trains itself to respond. It's the amygdala, teaches your body to protect itself in any stimulus that feels similar. So if your body thinks this is an unsafe situation or something that's a stimulus very similar, it's going to respond just like it did when it needed to keep you alive or protect you when you were a kid. But when you're in marriage, and you start having an argument or something like that, and your spouse starts reacting very violently, or, like I say violent, that's the wrong word, emotionally charged to something that doesn't really seem like it should have hit that hard or whatever. And then you get charged because like, oh, well, now you're off the handle and I'm off the handle. And so what we didn't realize is like, we were basically like Jekyll and Hyde because we both kind of triggered each other's triggers really hard. And it wasn't until both of us were like really digging into all of that stuff and like, why am I this way? And really working through that now, like, we have space between, we don't really yell at each other anymore and things like that. And when there is disagreement, there's very rapid apologies and things, but we've been married 10 years and it's like, we just now got to that point. So that's my like word of caution to everyone out there who maybe not married yet, or you are married, is even if you had a good upbringing, there's still probably aspects about it that weren't good. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like super traumatic to have patterns ingrained in you that will show up almost subconsciously in the way that you respond or speak to your family or interact with them. And again, back to like leading self, that's an area where I think a lot of men miss the point, is digging into that stuff because it doesn't feel good. Like, I mean, quite frankly, I'd rather go box and get my face punched in than have to like dig through painful memories. It's hard work, but it's rewarding because when you come out the other side, you have so much more awareness, not just of yourself, but how others are responding. And you can finally have empathy and compassion for like, oh, they didn't really mean what they said. They're upset and they're reacting. They're not responding.
Yeah. How do we get there? Is that through counseling? Is that through therapy? What's the work look like?
I think it would depend on like what you've been through.
Mm.
For me, it's been a lot of counseling. For me and my wife, we've gone through a boatload of counseling. So we've been with the same marriage counselor for 11 years. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, then clearly they're not helping you. It's like, no. I don't think we'd still be married without her. So she's not the typical one who's like where the man's always wrong. Like there's multiple times, where it's like we're both held accountable. So um, she has been an incredible resource into our life to help us through very difficult times. And I'm really glossing over a lot here, but we went to this place called Onsite. It's here in Tennessee. It's actually pretty like famous, like kind of revolutionized therapy, but it's all group session type stuff. So I've been there twice. And then I went to a place called Mighty Oaks. That place is incredible. Mighty Oaks is an amazing organization. It's founded by Chad Robichaux. He was a Marine Force recon vet, Strike Force MMA champion, and then like his life was basically falling apart. And he got like he had people come around him and help him get his life back together and save his marriage. And so then he was like, this needs to be a thing for more people. So why not me? So he founded Mighty Oaks, and that's a place too where they teach a lot of these things we've been talking about: genuine masculinity and accepting accountability and responsibility and things like that. So that was a huge help for me, was going there too, because it gave me, at the time, it was a little bit of like a lifeline. Like they threw out the lifeline and I was able to get my head back above the water, and I was able to start doing my work further to stop just like damaging everything around me.
Well, where do you see the podcast heading from here? Kind of what are you guys hoping to accomplish with it? What's the big picture?
I mean, my long-term vision is to have some sort of a large network where we can kind of be a resource to train and mentor fathers. And or even if you're not yet, you're just a young man who wants to get married one day and wants to be a dad, that's the best time to learn how to do those things. It's not after the fact. So we want to create not just like an entertaining podcast or whatever. We want to create a network that, guys can come in for advice and I think I'm like pondering how to like build classes and stuff that people could work through, kind of like self-help and stuff like that. Playing around with maybe some coaching to do more intimate kind of like group meetings and stuff. So there's a lot of aspirations we have and vision for that. But at the end of the day, it's like whatever the vessel, I just want to help other guys out there. Cause like I know everything that I struggled with. And I'm like, man, if I would have had some more of this around me, I have to believe I would have done a lot better sooner, especially when it came to like being a good husband and a good father. And unfortunately, I learned a lot of lessons a little too late, or later, a lot later than I would have liked.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all do, right? And I think if we can go back in time, we would like to change things, right? But hey, we can't, right? So we've got to chart the path moving forward, and if we can, help others that are starting to come up, then that's all the more power to us, right? To reach out a helping hand. So appreciate what you guys are doing on the podcast, man. Like I said, we're totally aligned in mission, so anything that we can do to help, dude, would love to.
I appreciate that, man.
So,
and likewise, we want to help out Tedco. I'll buy some pre-workout after the episode.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So it's best if you snort it.
Okay.
No, I'm don't sue me, guys. All right. But no, where is the best place for guys to go find out about the podcast?
Yeah. So we post every episode to every podcast platform. So whichever your platform of choice is, we're probably on it. And it's just The Present Fathers Podcast. And then we put everything to YouTube as well. So if you like having the visual, every episode's up on YouTube. Obviously we do shorts and all that kind of stuff too, but we have an Instagram, we have a TikTok, we have a Facebook page. But yeah, if you go to our Instagram, and it's just at The Present Fathers Podcast, we have a link tree. You can look us up there, and it's got everything. And also, we will have a store. I don't know when this episode will come out, but as we're recording of this week, our T-shirt store.
I was about to say, man, I was
running. Yeah,
so here's a little preview. Look at the merch, bro.
Yeah, this one's it's my favorite design. It says dad, and then beneath it says noun, and it says provider, protector, present. So yeah, man. So for those listening, Drew was a massive help in teaching me how to get all that set up. So thank you, brother. Here we are about a month later, finally got it launched. And
I'm talking about, man. That's what I'm talking about. Massive action,
Yes. So we're trying to practice what we preach.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it, man. YouTube or podcast platforms, pick your, take your favorite, and we will continue to put them in all those places. Because again, we want to be a resource. I for whatever reason didn't have these things poured into me at a time when I really needed them. So I'm very serious about trying to do better for guys behind me. Yeah.
Well, good, man. We'll link everything up in the show description, so you guys can go check out George, go check out the Present Fathers Podcast. Go give a listen, go give a rating. Incredible stuff that you guys have going on. So I appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, hey, if you got any value from this episode, which I know that you did, so don't lie to yourself. You need to go down and leave us a quick review, and leave us a comment. Would you like? What do you want to hear more of? And then also, I want you to share this episode with some dad in your network. So I ask the same two things after every show, and the show's growing, so you guys must be doing that, which is awesome. I appreciate it. But that is how we spread the message, because we don't really run ads on the show. I'm not going to run ads to this show. So it's word of mouth. So if you got value, I want you to share this show. I want you to leave us a review. So, all right, guys, with that, we will close it there. Thanks again, George, for coming on, man. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the show and supporting our mission to change the culture by creating more epic dads. If this message resonates with you and you're ready to start becoming the husband, father, and man that you are called to be, I'd like to invite you to do two things. The first is to join our free online community called the Epic Dad Crew. Inside the crew, you will get access to resources, workout programs, courses, community, everything you need to start leveling up as a dad. We are not meant to be lone wolves. We are meant to be part of a tribe, surrounded by men that will challenge us and hold us accountable to living as our best selves. So hit the link in the description of this episode and join the Epic Dad Crew today. And if you are ready to accelerate your results and create massive change in your life, I'd like to invite you to join our 90-day Epic Dad Accelerator. Our goal with the accelerator is to help you create an unshakable foundation as a husband and a father, build unstoppable discipline and habits, get into incredible shape with a custom workout and nutrition plan, and provide massive accountability to becoming the type of man you want to become. If you are ready to radically change your life as a father in just 90 days, hit the link in the description of the show to learn more and see if the accelerator is a good fit for you. Thanks for listening. Now go be epic.